There's a special kind of marine snail that once numbered in the millions along the California coast, but overconsumption, warming waters, and ocean acidification have made it critically endangered, which is why what we're about to do feels wrong. Cheers. Santa Monica is perhaps one of the best beach cities in the world, full of iconic attractions, miles of soft, sandy beaches, and breathtaking natural beauty. And until recently, that natural beauty extended beneath the waves. Thousands of miles of lush kelp forests, home to thousands of marine species. But in the last decade, a series of catastrophic events have led to a devastating loss of habitat and biodiversity all along the Pacific coast. It all started with a disease that left the sunflower sea star functionally extinct.
People just think the ocean's the ocean. I go there to play and enjoy the beach, and that's where it ends. But the ocean is really intrinsically tied to our health as people and what's going on land as well. So I think because people don't know what's happening in the ocean, they think, well, it's bad, but it doesn't affect me. And the truth is it does very greatly affect us if the ocean is not doing well.
This is Jen Burney, a marine biologist with SAFE, a program dedicated to saving animals from extinction. Jen loves weird sea creatures. The weirder the better.
The less major organs that an animal has and the more kind of weird parts that we're not used to they have, I find that super interesting. And once you start digging into all these random animals you may have not cared about before, you start to realize what an important role each of those things play in a way that you never think about until you start really investigating it.
One of those strange but important creatures is the sunflower sea star. And like so many things in life, their importance wasn't fully appreciated until after they were gone. You see, before 2013, there were billions, and no one thought to worry about losing them. But warming waters made them susceptible to sea star wasting disease, and now, from Washington down the Pacific coast, almost 99% have been wiped out. However, tucked away beneath the Santa Monica Pier, one sunflower sea star still lives at the healed Bay Aquarium, blissfully unaware of the fate of its species.
I'm almost a little frightened to touch. There's a sort of fearful fascination with it because it's so alien looking.
Yes.
And I'm a little bit of an arachnophobe.
It is a little spider-like with all of the arms. I think people get freaked out by animals that have too many arms, and this one has a lot.
It does.
Oh, it's like a cat. It's like it's like a pet.
It's a lot softer than people think it's gonna be. They're a little more soft-bodied than some of these other species of stars that are really, really hard, but they're very full of water, and that makes them quite bubbly and soft. 2013 was a huge year for when things really started to decline, but it actually started much sooner than that. We used to have southern sea otters, and we no longer have them. They were hunted out in fur trade. Now they are protected, but unfortunately we don't have southern sea otters here. They're a huge predator of sea urchins, so losing that initial predator was kind of the start of this long chain. And it wasn't until 2013 when we ended up starting to lose the other significant urchin predator, the Pycnopodia helianthoides sunflower sea star, that we really saw the effects of losing both of those. So right now, because we have no urchin predators of significance, these urchins are now just in huge masses and they love to eat kelp. So what we're seeing is because there's not a checks and balances system in place anymore, the kelp is being overrun. So the urchins just keep getting more and more dense, and the kelp just keeps going down, down, down. And eventually you're just gonna get to a place where you have something called an urchin barren, where there's no food for the actual urchins to eat, but they're still there in just giant masses. And now you've completely lost your kelp forest.
Do you have nightmares about urchin barrens?
I have nightmares about everything related to ocean health, but urchin barrens are shocking. I think for marine biologists in particular, general public may look at that and not understand why it's a bad thing, but really anywhere, even a coral reef you look at, if it's not just covered in life, different kinds of life, something is wrong. And so when you look at a section of kelp forest and all you see is urchin and everything else is bare rock, that should tell you that something alarming is happening, because the more diverse an ecosystem is, that means you have all of these species that are filling roles. And the more of them you have, the more healthy an ecosystem typically is. So we've just got this one just sitting there in a pile of nothing, and that's really bad in terms of gauging the health of the ecosystem.
Land forests get all the credit, but the truth is, along with algae, kelp provides the majority of oxygen for the planet. Kelp also sequesters carbon, mitigates ocean acidification, and helps prevent coastal erosion. But beyond that, kelp forests create safe refuge, nursery grounds, and food for thousands of species. Kelp brings life to what would otherwise be barren sea. And so the hope is that by bringing back the sunflower sea star, the kelp forest ecosystem can be rebalanced. To learn about a possible solution, I met another marine biologist at an unlikely place, a seafood restaurant with an endangered delicacy on the menu. Abalone is another kelp dweller that's critically threatened. But thanks to aquaculture, which is simply the growing of marine life, abalone has a chance of recovering.
Laura, eating a critically endangered creature with a marine biologist seems incompatible. How are we able to do this?
Yeah, it goes great. But what we're looking at, abalone, the endangered species, or threatened species, is sustainably farmed.
What does that mean, sustainably farmed?
Yeah, that's a great question. Abalone in the wild right now, the fishery for it is completely shut down. We're species protected in the wild. But there's still a demand for abalone for seafood restaurants. So instead of taking from the wild, we're growing it in systems that don't require a ton of input. They feed on kelp or algae from the environments, and they're able to raise them from very, very small to dinner plate size. Fresh abalone. Have you ever tried it before?
I don't think I've ever tried it before.
Yeah.
Cheers. Oh, it's like tasting the sea, but not in that like terrible salty, in a really subtle, nice way. And how is sustainable, sort of seafood farming and then aquaculture helpful for conservation? It strikes me as, kind of a layperson that if they are endangered or a protected species, surely eating them is just counterproductive. We should throw any that we can make back into the ocean.
Right. It definitely feels like that. So there's a couple of different parts to it. It raises awareness for the species, right? So it's still on the dinner plate. People are aware of its existence, which is important. The facilities that farm abalone also get to double their efforts by contributing to conservation. So they have the facilities set up to be able to grow them, to also help the wild populations. And then it's taking off wild pressures. So at some point, when the abalone industry opens back up for fishing, maybe we won't need to open it back up because we'll have a source that's sustainably farmed.
And the success of aquaculture for abalone, what is that teaching you about the work you're doing with the sunflower sea star?
That it can be done, right?
I traveled 2 hours north to Santa Barbara to see successful aquaculture in action. This is where the abalone that became my dinner came from. At the cultured abalone, a kind of resurrection is taking place, as generations of abalone are grown in conditions identical to their natural home.
Aquaculture is the only way you can get abalone on your plate from California right now, but it's also really important to have facilities like this where we're able to grow abalone and then release them to the wild as well. So we're working with multiple projects that are trying to outplant abalone to the wild and boost that population, and hopefully with enough of that effort, as well as keeping the fishery closed long enough for the population to recover in the wild, we could potentially see a return to abalone fishing in the future.
Always big.
Yeah, so this is about a 5.5-year-old abalone.
Okay. Oh, he's like pulsating. I can feel him sort of wriggling.
They can move that whole foot around.
I'm surprisingly not as grossed out by it as I thought I'd be. I felt like it's going to be a slimy, tenderly experience, and I'm surprisingly okay with it.
Yeah, they kind of have that effect on people. They're very charming. once you look past the shell.
Right, right.
I really fell in love with maybe some of the less charismatic animals in the ocean, like our abalone and our scallops. With abalone specifically, the cultural aspect is really interesting to me. Just how many people grew up eating abalone, all the different stories you can hear, and why these have been so important throughout time. Just adds another layer to wanting to understand this animal. When you first look at an abalone, it doesn't necessarily look like there's much going on there, but when you are able to pick it up and actually look in the abalone's little eyes, it's just kind of magical to see that that's an animal. It's living, it's moving along the ocean floor, and there's just so many things like that in the ocean that you just wouldn't expect to be something more.
As soon as they fertilize, they start to change. We'll get to see the cells divide in real time. And that's how we know great fertilization was successful. We can let these sit in their nice little watery incubators, and we'll check on them the next day. It takes about 24 hours from fertilization to hatching. When they hatch, they come out looking like these little diamond shapes with little cilia propellers on the side. From there, they just start developing really quickly. And then this morning when I came in, they looked like these little, almost like a rocket ship, kind of buzzing around, swimming very actively. And now, just a matter of a few hours later, I checked them around 8:30 this morning, they're already starting to develop a shell, which is this rounded piece at the bottom of the larvae. They're still swimming, they're still actively moving throughout the water column, but it's really incredible to see how they change. We like to joke here that they're the fastest snail in the West, particularly once they're a little bit larger and they're what we call the intermediate size, which is maybe from like a little bit bigger than a pencil eraser to about the size of my thumb. We'll show people on tours like, oh, it's snails, how fast can they move? And you'll flip over a plate for them to look at them and they just start moving and everyone's like, oh my gosh.
So right now we have over 900,000 larval white abalone here, with the goal of growing those to a large enough size to return to the wild. It's a slow process. Abalone are very slow growing, so to get them to a size where they're able to be outplanted takes a few years, but we're definitely in progress and making strides to getting more abalone out in the wild. Historically in California, there was a very popular recreational fishery. As the population declined and fishing got more and more restricted, that kind of cultural practice has been lost through time. So younger generations, abalone are really a new concept for them that they're not really familiar with.
We've definitely moved away from this concept of connectedness to the ocean, and there are certain people who still maintain this spirituality, and I think you find that a lot actually in indigenous culture, where the species of the sea are relatives. They are that connected to us. They're our ancestors. For us at Heal the Bay, we talk a lot about how the ocean and the animals that they're seeing are our neighbors, community, keeping that connection there. And I think we've definitely lost that as a culture, to think about our environment as part of us as opposed to separate. I actually connected with some indigenous people from New Zealand who are working to actively restore their waterfront. And so their main mission is to change the narrative from hunters and gatherers of the ocean to ocean gardeners and tenders. Viewing it from this sustainable ocean tender gardener viewpoint means we're only taking what we need. We're not over-harvesting from the ocean. We are participating in practices such as aquaculture that actually contributes to the environment. It builds habitat for local animals, it helps restore water quality, can sequester carbon. Different techniques that actually support the regrowth of the ocean as opposed to just taking from it.
Part of what we're doing with the aquaculture program with Santa Monica College is Heal the Bay has allowed us to take over some of their space to build a wet lab where students can actually get hands-on aquaculture experience. And the thing that I wanted to bring to this program is that they're going to hopefully help me build a big system specifically for rearing sunflower sea stars. They're most likely not able to find each other in the wild, which means they can't reproduce and actually get their population back in those areas. And so that's where aquaculture steps in. If the animal cannot do this in the wild in a natural way, we can step in and say, no problem, we got you.
One of the main things that I think most people either don't understand or don't have a really good idea of is the general condition of the environment. It's always like we'll never be able to do anything, so why even try? But I feel like in order to actually make efforts to start conserving the environment and our marine ecosystems, you have to get past doom and gloom. You have to think that you can do something about it in order to get stuff done. Working with the people at Heal the Bay and then also at SMC with the aquaculture program really motivates me to keep going and helps me feel like there's more people that care, and that makes me want to care more as well, because it's not just me, it's all of these people, and together we can all make a difference.
I genuinely want people to care about this animal and what it means to our ecosystem. It's a really hard sell. They're not cute in the stereotypical sense, but honestly, people more support and want to help animals they find cute. It's a very basic human reaction.
I'm almost a little frightened to touch.
Well, I don't like being called basic, but I can't pretend I found the sunflower sea star cute. However, what I did find was people who cared deeply about the strange and overlooked creatures of the sea. And I learned that even the weirdest among us play an important role. Marjorie was inspired by the sunflower sea star and recruited both scientists and artists to paint a mural at her school.
It definitely sparked conversations, especially about the sea urchin, and then also the sunflower sea star has so many arms. It looks really weird. People are like, what is that thing? It kind of sparked the conversation of how do they interact? Why do we need to save these things? It kind of got people more interested into the biology aspect. Science and art don't often intersect, and I think a lot of people in the art department that I talk to and also the aquaculture department are super excited to get that chance to work together. I feel like no matter how bad things get or how many threats that the environment faces, I can't give up on it, and I will always care about the ocean and its creatures and habitats and ecosystems.
How do you think it's going to feel when you release the sunflower sea star back into the ocean?
I think everyone involved will just be a mess of a person, honestly. It's going to be pretty overwhelming. These efforts for this species have been going on since 2019. And it's not just been the SAFE program. People were working on it before we ever came along. But by the time we get permission and have everything in place to actually reintroduce these animals, it's possible we'll have been working for a decade, That's a lot of people's life and passion that have poured into this. So I think the reaction will be very strong in the best way. I obviously want the health of our oceans to be restored. And I know this is a very small chunk of it, but it's still just something that I can do to participate in that and hopefully be successful.